It's winter now in the northern latitudes where we are. The coastal zones are frozen, and everything is kind of waiting for the winter to disappear. So this is a great time for us to talk a little bit about probably the most important avenue for improving coastal zones that you, my students, and that many of us who do research in this area have identified over the past 20 years that I've been doing work on this, and that's education. Whenever we look at problems, whether it's fishery problems, whether it is development issues, tourism, waste management and spillage, whether it is conservation and preservation of reefs, the one solution that always comes up is we need to educate people so that they understand the limits of the resources that are being affected and also so that they change their behavior. Of course, regulation, government laws, and things like that are important as well. Let me ask you something. What kind of education do you think we ought to develop and project out there in order to improve these conditions? Should it be traditional education in the public schools or in the school systems? Education, for example, in schools in developing countries? Should it be viral education? Should we use YouTube, social networking sites such as MySpace and Facebook and others? How do we do this? And I think you will immediately find that as you start kind of classifying education into different categories, you're going to see that we need several different approaches. Number one, we need what I call elite to elite, peer-to-peer education between those of us who study coastal policy and those who make the decisions. Presidents, prime ministers, cabinet officers, local government officials. Very often they're not very well informed. They don't know how beaches form and transform themselves. They don't know that barrier islands really are temporary locations and that you shouldn't be building permanent structures there because you're going to have nothing but trouble. And so education at the elite level is necessary. Of course, education at the lowest level is necessary, but remember this. In many of these countries around the world, we just saw a report this morning on international CNN, there is no education. Literally, most people do not have access to any kind of schooling. And so if you want to then add to that minimal curriculum, maybe 2 or 3 years or 4 years maximum, some kind of coastal environmental education, you're going to be competing with all the traditional curriculum. So you have to figure out how to do this. And then, of course, you do need to educate what I call the intermediaries, not the poorest, not the fishermen, not the villagers who live near the coast, and not the elites alone, but also students, academics, professionals, the news media, and others. And I think a very sophisticated, exciting, entertaining, sort of an attractive campaign using things like viral internet education, using YouTube and so on, would attract people, not because they're forced to learn about coastal issues, coastal problems, and coastal solutions, but they'd go there because it's interesting and fun and exciting. So I want you, who are the leaders, are going to be the leaders in all of this, to come up with some good ideas. And I think it's sort of surprising that in all the years I've been teaching coastal policy, coastal zone management, international coastal zone management, no student really has ever said, hey, I want to do a project on educating people around the world and in the US on how to improve coastal zones. See you when it gets warmer. I hope you enjoy the class.